Chapter 1: The Condemned Man. In the heart of 19th-century France, amidst the tumultuous backdrop of political unrest and social upheaval, there existed a place where time seemed to stand still, the grim confines of a prison cell. Here, in the year 1829, a man named Jean found himself shackled by fate, condemned to face the ultimate punishment for his transgressions against society. Jean's story was not an uncommon one in a time when justice was often swift and merciless. Born into a world of poverty and hardship, he had been forced to fend for himself from a young age, scraping by on the meager scraps of existence that fate had seen fit to bestow upon him. With no family to speak of and no prospects for a better life, Jean had turned to a life of petty crime in order to survive, stealing and scheming his way through the streets of Paris in a desperate bid to stay one step ahead of starvation. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for Jean. Caught in the act of a particularly daring robbery, he had been swiftly apprehended by the authorities and brought to trial for his crimes. And now, as he sat in his cold, damp cell awaiting the dawn of his final day, the weight of his impending doom bore down upon him like a leaden cloak, suffocating him with its crushing inevitability. The hours stretched on endlessly as Jean wrestled with his demons, grappling with the bitter reality of his situation. He thought of the life he had lived, the choices he had made, and the people he had wronged along the way. He thought of his mother, long since gone from this world, and wondered what she would think of the man he had become. Would she weep for him, he wondered, or would she turn away in shame at the sight of her son, now branded a criminal and condemned to die? But amidst the darkness, a flicker of defiance burned within Jean's breast. Though the chains that bound him may have been made of iron, his spirit remained unbroken, defiant in the face of adversity. For even in the darkest of times, there remained a glimmer of hope, a sliver of light that refused to be extinguished. And so, as the final hours of his life slipped away into the abyss, Jean resolved to face his fate with courage and dignity, determined to meet his end on his own terms. For though he may have been condemned by society, he would not allow himself to be defined by the sins of his past. He would go to his grave with his head held high, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. And as the first light of dawn began to creep through the narrow slit of his cell window, Jean closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer for forgiveness. For though he may have been condemned to die, he would face his fate with the knowledge that he had lived his life on his own terms, and that in the end, that was all that truly mattered. Chapter 2: Memories of Freedom. In the dim light of dawn, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the small, barred window of his cell, Jean found himself drifting back through the mists of time to a place long forgotten, the distant shores of his youth, where the world was filled with endless possibilities and the future stretched out before him like an open road. Memories flooded Jean's mind like a torrential downpour, washing over him in waves of bittersweet nostalgia. He recalled the sun-drenched fields of his childhood, where he had spent countless hours running barefoot through the tall grass, his laughter echoing through the crisp morning air. He remembered the warmth of his mother's embrace, her gentle touch a balm to his weary soul, and the sound of her voice as she sang him lullabies beneath the twinkling stars. But those halcyon days felt like a distant dream now, a fleeting moment of respite in a lifetime of struggle and hardship. For Jean's youth had been marked by poverty and deprivation, his days spent toiling in the fields or scouring the streets for scraps of food to sustain him. And though he had known moments of happiness amidst the sorrow, they had always been overshadowed by the harsh realities of life in 19th-century France. Yet, even in the darkest of times, there had been moments of pure, unadulterated joy, glimpses of a world beyond the confines of his meager existence. Jean remembered the thrill of exploration as he wandered through the bustling streets of Paris, his senses alive with the sights and sounds of the city. He remembered the taste of freedom as he raced through the winding alleyways, his heart pounding with exhilaration at the thought of all the adventures that lay ahead. But those moments of freedom had been fleeting, snatched away in an instant by the cruel hand of fate. Caught in the throes of desperation, Jean had turned to a life of crime in a desperate bid to survive, his dreams of a brighter future dashed against the cold, hard reality of life on the streets. And now, as he sat in his cold, dark cell awaiting the final sunrise, those memories felt like little more than a cruel mockery of the life he had once known. But amidst the pain and the sorrow, there remained a glimmer of hope, a tiny spark of defiance that refused to be extinguished. For though Jean's body may have been confined to this prison cell, his spirit remained free, soaring high above the walls of his captivity on wings of memory and imagination. And as he closed his eyes and let the memories wash over him like a gentle tide, he found solace in the knowledge that no matter what fate may have in store, the spirit of freedom would always live on within him, a beacon of light in the darkness of his despair. Chapter 3: The Weight of Regret. As the shadows lengthened and the day wore on, Jean found himself consumed by a relentless tide of regret that threatened to engulf him entirely. Like a heavy stone weighing down his weary soul, the burden of his past transgressions bore down upon him with crushing force, leaving him gasping for air in the suffocating embrace of his own guilt. With each passing moment, memories of his misdeeds flooded Jean's mind like a relentless torrent, dragging him deeper into the murky depths of despair. He saw the faces of those he had wronged, their accusing stares burning holes in his conscience as he relived the pain and suffering he had inflicted upon them. He heard their cries for mercy echoing in his ears, a haunting chorus of voices that refused to be silenced. But it was not only the harm he had caused to others that weighed heavily on Jean's heart, it was also the knowledge of the opportunities he had squandered and the dreams he had left unfulfilled. He thought of the paths not taken, the chances not seized, and the countless moments of weakness that had led him down this dark and treacherous road. If only he could turn back time, if only he could undo the mistakes of his past, perhaps he could find redemption in the eyes of those he had wronged. But time, it seemed, was a cruel mistress, and there were no second chances to be had. The past was set in stone, immutable and unchangeable, leaving Jean trapped in a prison of his own making, with no hope of escape. And as he stared into the abyss of his own regret, he felt a sense of hopelessness wash over him like a tidal wave, threatening to drag him down into the depths of despair. Yet, amidst the darkness, a tiny spark of defiance flickered within Jean's breast, refusing to be extinguished by the overwhelming weight of his regret. For though he may have been consumed by guilt and remorse, he refused to surrender to despair. He knew that true redemption could only be found through acceptance of his past mistakes and a steadfast commitment to forging a better future. And so, with a heavy heart and a weary soul, Jean resolved to carry the burden of his regret with him as he faced his final moments. For though he may never be able to atone for the sins of his past, he would not allow them to define him. He would face his fate with courage and dignity, knowing that even in the darkest of times, there remained a glimmer of hope for redemption. Chapter 4: A Glimmer of Hope. In the depths of despair, amidst the suffocating weight of regret, Jean felt a faint glimmer of hope flicker within his weary soul like a solitary candle in the darkness. It was a fragile thing, easily overshadowed by the shadows of his past, but it refused to be extinguished, burning brightly against the backdrop of his despair. With each passing moment, that tiny spark of hope grew stronger, fueled by the sheer force of Jean's determination to rise above the circumstances that had brought him to this grim fate. For though he may have been condemned by society, he refused to be defined by the mistakes of his past. He knew that true redemption lay not in the erasure of his sins, but in the courage to confront them head-on and strive for a better future. And so, as the final hours of his life slipped away like grains of sand through an hourglass, Jean found himself clinging to that glimmer of hope like a drowning man grasping for a lifeline. It filled him with a sense of purpose, a newfound determination to make the most of the time he had left, no matter how fleeting it may be. In the darkness of his cell, Jean began to reflect on the possibilities that lay ahead, imagining a future in which he could finally find peace within himself and make amends for the wrongs he had committed. He thought of the people he had harmed, and the pain he had caused them, and he vowed to do whatever it took to seek their forgiveness, even if it meant facing his own demise with courage and dignity. But perhaps most importantly, Jean found hope in the knowledge that he was not alone in his struggle. For even in the darkest of times, there were those who stood by his side, offering him solace and support in his hour of need. Whether it was the kind-hearted priest who had offered him words of comfort and wisdom, or the fellow prisoners who had shared their stories of redemption and renewal, Jean knew that he was not without allies in his fight for salvation. And as he closed his eyes and let the warmth of that hope wash over him like a gentle breeze, Jean felt a sense of peace settle over his troubled soul. For though he may have been condemned to die, he refused to let despair be his final legacy. He would face his fate with courage and dignity, knowing that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope for a brighter tomorrow. Chapter 5: The Visit. As the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the cold stone floor of Jean's cell, a sense of anticipation stirred within him. For today was not like any other day. Today, he was to receive a visitor. The heavy iron door creaked open, and Jean looked up to see the kind-faced priest who had become a familiar presence in the lonely confines of his cell. There was a warmth in the old man's eyes, a glimmer of compassion that spoke volumes without the need for words. With a gentle smile, the priest approached Jean and took a seat beside him on the narrow cot. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft rustle of fabric as the priest adjusted his robes. Then, in a voice like a soft summer breeze, the priest began to speak. He spoke of forgiveness and redemption, of finding peace in the face of death. He spoke of a higher power, a force greater than themselves, that watched over them even in their darkest hours. As Jean listened to the words of the wise old man, he felt a sense of calm wash over him like a gentle wave. It was as if the weight of his burden had been lifted, if only for a moment, and he was free to breathe again. They spoke for hours, the priest offering words of comfort and guidance, while Jean poured out his heart, sharing the secrets and regrets that had weighed him down for so long. And with each passing moment, the walls that had closed in around him seemed to fade away, replaced by a sense of connection and understanding that transcended the confines of their bleak surroundings. When the time came for the priest to leave, Jean felt a pang of sadness at the thought of saying goodbye. But as he watched the old man make his way towards the door, he knew that he carried with him a gift far greater than any material possession, the gift of hope. And as Jean settled down to sleep that night, his heart lighter than it had been in years, he knew that no matter what fate may have in store, he would face it with courage and dignity, secure in the knowledge that he was not alone in his journey. For even in the darkest of times, there were those who stood by his side, offering him solace and support in his hour of need. Chapter 6: Reflections in the Dark. In the quiet solitude of his cell, as the world outside faded into darkness and the only sound was the rhythmic echo of his own heartbeat, Jean found himself drawn into a state of deep reflection. With nothing but his thoughts to keep him company, he embarked on a journey of self-discovery, peeling back the layers of his past to reveal the truths that lay hidden beneath the surface. As he sat in the stillness of the night, Jean's mind wandered back to the moments that had shaped his life, the choices he had made, and the roads he had traveled. He thought of the paths not taken, the dreams left unfulfilled, and the people he had loved and lost along the way. And in the darkness of his solitude, he saw clearly for the first time the full extent of his own humanity, with all its flaws and imperfections laid bare before him. But amidst the shadows of his past, Jean also found moments of light, tiny pinpricks of hope that shimmered like distant stars in the night sky. He thought of the kindness of strangers, the warmth of a smile, and the simple joys that had sustained him through even the darkest of times. And as he sifted through the memories that danced across his mind like ghosts in the darkness, he began to see the beauty that lay hidden within the chaos of his existence. With each passing moment, Jean felt a sense of clarity wash over him like a cleansing tide, washing away the doubts and fears that had plagued him for so long. He saw now that life was not just a series of random events, but a tapestry woven from the threads of his own experiences, each one shaping the person he had become. And as he gazed into the abyss of his own reflection, Jean found himself filled with a strange sense of peace, a newfound acceptance of the person he saw staring back at him from the darkness. For though he may have made mistakes along the way, he knew now that they were a part of who he was, and that without them, he would not be the man he had become. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the narrow slit of his cell window, Jean closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for the journey that had brought him to this moment. For though he may have been condemned to die, he was filled with a sense of purpose and meaning that transcended the confines of his prison walls. And as he awaited the dawn of his final day, Jean knew that he was ready to face whatever the future may hold, secure in the knowledge that he had found peace within himself, even in the darkest of times. Chapter 7: The Long Goodbye. As the first light of dawn painted the sky with hues of orange and gold, casting a warm glow over the world outside, Jean found himself confronting the reality of his impending fate with a heavy heart and a sense of resignation. For today was to be his final day on this earth, the last chapter in a story that had been written long before he was even born. With each passing moment, the weight of his impending departure bore down upon Jean like a leaden cloak, suffocating him with its suffocating embrace. He felt as if he were standing on the precipice of eternity, teetering on the edge of oblivion as the world spun on without him, indifferent to his plight. But amidst the overwhelming sense of despair that threatened to consume him, Jean also felt a strange sense of peace wash over him like a gentle breeze. For though he may have been condemned to die, he refused to let fear be his final legacy. He would face his fate with courage and dignity, knowing that even in death, there was a beauty to be found in the fleeting moments of life. As the hours slipped by, Jean found himself surrounded by a small cadre of well-wishers who had come to bid him farewell. There were fellow prisoners, their faces drawn and solemn, who offered words of comfort and camaraderie in the face of their shared fate. There were guards, their expressions grim and impassive, who stood watch over him with a mixture of pity and contempt. And there were friends and family members, their tear-stained faces a poignant reminder of the lives he would leave behind. But amidst the sorrow and the pain, there were also moments of unexpected joy and laughter, fleeting glimpses of the love and warmth that had sustained Jean through even the darkest of times. He shared stories and memories with those who had gathered around him, basking in the warmth of their companionship as if it were a precious gift to be treasured. And as the final moments of his life ticked away like grains of sand in an hourglass, Jean found himself overwhelmed by a profound sense of gratitude for the blessings he had received, however fleeting they may have been. For though his time on this earth may have been short, he knew that he had lived a life filled with love and laughter, and that was more than some could ever hope for. And so, as the hour of his execution drew near, Jean took a deep breath and squared his shoulders, steeling himself for the journey that lay ahead. For though he may have been leaving this world behind, he knew that his spirit would live on in the hearts of those who had known and loved him, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit in the face of adversity. And as he stepped out into the blinding light of day, his heart heavy with sorrow yet filled with a quiet sense of peace, Jean knew that he was ready to embrace whatever lay beyond the veil of death, secure in the knowledge that he had lived his life with courage and dignity, even in the face of his darkest hour. Chapter 8: Facing the Unknown. As the moment of reckoning drew near, Jean stood at the threshold of the unknown, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The world around him seemed to blur into a haze of indistinct shapes and colors, as if he were viewing it through a foggy lens, the lines between reality and illusion blurred beyond recognition. But amidst the chaos of his thoughts, Jean found himself strangely calm, his mind clear and focused as he prepared to meet his fate head-on. For though the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, he refused to let fear be his guide. He would face whatever lay ahead with courage and determination, knowing that even in the darkest of times, there was strength to be found in the depths of his own soul. With each step he took, the weight of his chain seemed to grow heavier, pulling him inexorably towards the inevitable end that awaited him. But Jean refused to be weighed down by the burden of his past. Instead, he drew strength from the knowledge that he had faced his demons and emerged stronger for it. As he made his way through the cold, sterile corridors of the prison, Jean felt a strange sense of detachment settle over him, as if he were merely a spectator in the unfolding drama of his own life. He watched with a detached curiosity as the world outside passed by in a blur of motion and noise, the sounds of life echoing faintly through the walls of his confinement. But amidst the chaos of the world outside, there was also a sense of serenity to be found, a quiet peace that seemed to permeate the very air around him. It was as if the universe itself were offering him a final moment of respite before the storm, a chance to gather his strength and prepare himself for the journey that lay ahead. And as Jean stepped out into the blinding light of day, his heart heavy with the weight of his impending fate, he knew that he was ready to face whatever lay beyond the veil of death. For though the road ahead may be long and treacherous, he would walk it with his head held high, secure in the knowledge that he had faced his final moments with courage and dignity, even in the face of the unknown. Chapter 9: The Final Moments. As Jean stood on the threshold of eternity, his heart heavy with the weight of his impending fate, he felt a strange sense of calm settle over him like a blanket of serenity. The world around him seemed to fade into insignificance, the sounds of life and movement melting away into a distant hum as he focused all his attention on the present moment. With each passing second, the air grew thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that seemed to hang in the balance like a taut wire on the verge of snapping. But Jean refused to be consumed by fear or despair. Instead, he drew strength from the depths of his own resolve, determined to face whatever lay ahead with courage and dignity. As the executioner prepared to carry out his grim duty, Jean closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer for forgiveness. He felt a strange sense of peace wash over him like a gentle breeze, as if all the burdens of his past had been lifted from his shoulders in that fleeting moment of clarity. And then, in the blink of an eye, it was over. The blade fell with a sickening thud, and darkness enveloped Jean like a shroud, swallowing him whole in its icy embrace. But even as his vision faded and his senses dulled, he felt a strange sense of liberation wash over him, as if he were finally free from the shackles of his earthly existence. In those final moments, as his life slipped away like sand through an hourglass, Jean felt a strange sense of peace settle over him like a warm embrace. He knew that his journey had come to an end, but he also knew that his spirit would live on in the hearts of those who had known and loved him, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit in the face of adversity. And as he slipped into the darkness of oblivion, Jean felt a sense of gratitude wash over him like a gentle wave. For though his time on this earth may have been brief, he knew that he had lived his life with courage and dignity, even in the face of his darkest hour. And in the end, that was all that truly mattered. Chapter 10: Legacy of Redemption. In the aftermath of Jean's passing, his story lingered in the hearts and minds of those who had borne witness to his final moments, leaving behind a legacy that transcended the confines of his earthly existence. For though he had been condemned to die, he had faced his fate with a courage and dignity that had touched the souls of all who had known him, leaving an indelible mark on the world that would endure long after his passing. In the days that followed, whispers of Jean's tale spread like wildfire through the streets of Paris, carried on the lips of those who had been touched by his bravery and resilience in the face of adversity. His name became a symbol of hope for the downtrodden and the oppressed, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of light to be found amidst the shadows. But perhaps more importantly, Jean's story served as a catalyst for change, inspiring others to rise up and demand justice in a world where the scales of fate too often tipped in favor of the powerful and the privileged. His courage in the face of death sparked a fire in the hearts of those who had long been silenced by fear and oppression, igniting a revolution that would shake the foundations of society to its core. And as the years passed and the memory of Jean's sacrifice faded into the annals of history, his legacy lived on as a testament to the power of redemption and the resilience of the human spirit. His story became a rallying cry for those who dared to dream of a better world, a world where justice and compassion reigned supreme, and where no one was condemned to die for the sins of their past. But perhaps most importantly, Jean's legacy lived on in the hearts of those who had known and loved him, a beacon of light in the darkness of their grief and despair. For though he may have been taken from them too soon, his spirit would live on in the memories they shared, a source of strength and inspiration that would guide them through even the darkest of times. And so, as the sun set on another day in Paris, the memory of Jean and his legacy of redemption lived on, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to triumph over even the greatest of adversities. And though he may have been gone, his spirit would live on forever in the hearts of all who had known him, a shining example of the power of hope to overcome even the darkest of nights.